The Lemonade Car Show is sponsored by OMVIC, Ontario's vehicle sales regulator. Welcome to the Lemonade Car Show. I'm your host, Lorraine Sommerfeld. The show is brought to you by OMVIC and Crown. Usually we have Ask the Mechanic. Today we have Ask the Officer. I'm joined by Alex Crew, and our mechanic, Chris Muir, is just window dressing on the end unless he has something really good to add to the conversation. Thank you for coming back. I really appreciate this.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Always a great topic and a lot of things people need to know. Off the top, there's been a couple big changes in the law as of January 1st.
That's right.
And I'm just the first one is about distracted driving.
That's right.
Finally got some teeth in the law. Can you tell us what the changes are?
So January 1st, there's been a change to the legislation which have increased the penalties for distracted driving. So for your first conviction, you're looking at a $615 fine up to a $1,000 fine, 3 demerit points, and a 3-day driver's license suspension, which is pretty hefty. Second conviction within a 5-year period, $615 up to a $2,000 fine, 6 demerit points, and a 7-day driver's license suspension.
Good luck on your insurance after that one.
There you go. And then for your third within a 5 years, it's a $3,000 fine, $615 up to $3,000, 6 demerit points, and a 30-day driver's license suspension. That's just if you're an G, F driver. Now, if you're a novice driver, G1, G2, M1, M2, there's no demerit points for your first, second, and third conviction. The fine structure stays the same, so you get a $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 fine for your first, second, third conviction. But upon your first conviction, as a novice driver, your license will be suspended for 30 days. For your second, it's going to be 90 days. And then if your third conviction within a 5-year period, you lose your license altogether and you have to start the process all over again.
The ladder.
Exactly.
Wow. It's about time there's some teeth in this, though, because I think most people, you still drive by, you still see people on their phones constantly.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And I know they're addicted. Like, it's the same little pings that go off in your brain, like if you're gambling or smoking crack, which I've never done either. But, so I get it. But do you think this is going to be what we need?
I think it is. And you know, I believe it's targeting our young drivers, our new drivers that say, hey, listen, this is unacceptable behavior. And we want to change that behavior. You know, we don't want those bad habits to form while you're a new driver. So, as you mentioned, the insurance and ramifications are going to be massive. You know, you have to pay a reinstatement fee once you get your license back. That's $275. So there's a lot of monetary fines involved and costs if you get convicted for this type of offense. Not only that, is if you're driving distracted, you're more likely to become involved in a collision. You might not see that pedestrian stepping off the sidewalk or the cyclist turning.
So other costs are even higher.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, if doing 100 kilometers an hour for 2 seconds, you've traveled the length of a hockey, a rink. Being Canadian, so
instead of football fields.
There you go, right? So I mean, what happens in 2 seconds? There's a lot of real estate that's traveled, so a lot can happen in that 2 seconds.
Other big change, Bill C-46.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff going on about that. I've written about it and taken a lot of blowback. It's changing how you can bust people for impaired.
Right.
Can you kind of quickly describe the 2 things that now allows you to do?
Okay, so Bill C-46, December 18th, mandatory alcohol screening came into effect. So if I stopped you for a lawful reason, I don't have to have reasonable suspicion to believe that you have alcohol in your body. I can just say, okay, I'd like you to provide a sample of your breath into the roadside screening device. I have to have that device with me. I can't call for it. Whereas before, I had to have reasonable suspicion that you had alcohol in your body before I can make a demand.
A lot of people hate this and say this is overreaching, and it's a little too Orwellian that you can just stop somebody randomly to do this. That's not why you guys want to have the ability to do this, though.
No, studies have shown that 50% of drivers that actually pass through a spot check are over the legal limit, and we don't detect them as police officers. So we're not doing a very good job of detecting, the drinking drivers. And, we're trained, we're getting our noses in there, taking a whiff and the whole bit. So by allowing us to have this, hey, listen, you've been stopped for a lawful reason. I'd like you to provide a sample. We're getting, impaired drivers off the road. I know our service, the couple of guys I work with, they did exactly that. They didn't have the reasonable suspicion to believe there was alcohol, but they made that demand for mandatory alcohol screening. They both failed and were over the legal limit. Not the last spot check, but the one previous, I stopped a young girl, same thing. So you have to have a plan in place at first, too. I guess I can get ahead of myself. We just can't do it randomly because we don't want to think of people that say, oh, we're biased in the way we do things. Mm-hmm. So I have a plan that when I'm at our spot check, I set my, my timer on my work phone for 40 minutes. So when that timer goes off, first car I see, I pull in. This is what happened to this young girl. I said, hey, listen, we're going to do a test, roadside screening device to make sure you haven't been drinking. And she ended up blowing a warn. So her license was suspended for 3 days. So it does work. Mm-hmm. And I understand people think, you know, we're just overstepping our boundaries. But studies have shown in Ireland, when they introduced this, within 4 years, their fatal motor vehicle collisions were reduced by 40%. So it does work.
That's interesting. We're going to come back and talk some more about this after the break. Back with more Lemonade. Lemonade Car Show is sponsored by OMVIC, Ontario's vehicle sales regulator. The Lemonade Car Show is sponsored by OMVIC, Ontario's vehicle sales regulator. Welcome back to the Lemonade Car Show, brought to you by OMVIC. I'm joined today by Alex Crew, he's with Toronto Police Service, and Chris Muir is our mechanic, being very quiet for a change on the end.
It's the intimidation factor. Yeah. So you're going to bust me for a mod?
Alex, we were talking about the recent changes,
yeah.
And the Bill C-46, there's two main components of it that I'm having a hard time explaining to readers, and I think you guys are getting a lot of blowback as well. It's the bolus effect?
Bolus drinking, yeah, and intervening drink law.
Can you quickly sort of define those two
bolus
things?
Drinking is basically before I get into my car, I'm at a bar, I boom, slam back 3 shots, see you later, I'm on the way home. So you're at home within, let's say, 15, 20 minutes, but you get stopped, the officer, or so you don't get home, but you do get stopped within 15, 20 minutes. The officer forgets to ask, hey, have you had a drink within the previous 15 minutes? So we don't know that you've had that drink. You blow into the roadside, and you fail. Now, the defense for the bolus is that while you were driving, your blood alcohol concentration wasn't over the legal limit at that time you were driving, but your body absorbed it, and then when you blew into the instrument, maybe an hour later, you were over the legal limit. So that bolus drinking law is no longer a defense. The next one is called the intervening drink law. So let's say you're driving along, get involved in a crash, you run into the bar, go slam back a few because you're trying to calm your nerves. All right, so you can't use that as a defense anymore. So, again, for me to walk into that bar, I have to have a lawful purpose. Okay, you being a witness said, oh, I saw the driver run into that bar, that's the person there, I can go up now and investigate you. I just can't walk into a bar, start chatting up a patron and say, hey, have you driven a car within the previous 2 hours? Watch you have a few drinks. Oh, by the way, I want you to provide a sample of your breath on the roadside and arrest you for over 80. So you can't do stuff like that. We have to have an active investigation on the go in order for us to do something like that.
Okay, so the headlines that are all careening like this, one way or the other, there's legislation. I'm sure some of it's going to be contested, some of it's going to be altered or thrown out because that's how it gets ironed out. But that's the intent, is people who are really looking for ways to evade being charged with being impaired.
The risky behavior, we want to quell that, stop that.
Okay, there's a lot more to come on this topic, I think, which is interesting. We have some really good questions for you, Sergeant Crook. Let's go to the phone.
Hi, my name is Lauren. I have a question for the police officers on this morning's show. I'm wondering what the full scope of distracted driving is, whether it's just using a cell phone or if it includes things like drinking a coffee, having a sandwich, changing a CD, etc.
That's a good one. It means a lot of things.
It does. So the present laws we have now, it's Section 78.1 of the Highway Traffic Act deals specifically with handheld devices. So your phones, entertainment devices. So that's how you're going to get that ticket. That's how you're going to get your 3, 7, 30-day driver's license suspension. Now, if you're having a coffee, driving a car, there's nothing wrong with that. But is it a distraction? It could be. If you've got a triple foam latte and it's steaming hot and you take a sip, you burn your lips, spills in your lap, and you cause a collision, were you distracted? Absolutely. But does that the legislation, the law apply to that? No, something like careless driving would apply for that particular situation. So yes, you are distracted, but we wouldn't lay that 78.1 section. It would be a careless driving charge.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that, because I thought anything that distracted you and caused that, including spilling, I thought that would be a distraction.
Yeah, it is, but it doesn't fall under that 78.1
That's
section
the
number of the
handheld
height.
thing.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's different.
Yeah.
No more spilling coffee. No more spilling lattes in your lap.
Well, I'm going to have to go straight from the latte to the black coffee. That's
There you
just
go.
what it is.
Let's take another question.
Hello, my name is Lillian. I have a question pertaining to what they're talking about now. Just wondered if you notice someone is doing a distracted driving with a cell phone or eating, are you able to call 911 and take their license number, or is that not what you could do? Thank you.
This is my sister, citizen arrester. She loves this stuff.
There you go. So 911 is for emergency calls, okay? So if somebody's driving distracted by, talking on their cell phone and they're weaving in and out, almost causing a collision, we would expect the 911 call. But if you're driving along and you see somebody and they're chatting away on the phone, are they breaking the law? Absolutely. So we do take online complaints to Toronto Police Service. So if you were to note the date, time, location, license plate number, and provide a description of that driver, and as long as you would be willing to come to court as a witness, you can file an online complaint. We will investigate that, lay a charge, but we would expect you then to come to court as a witness.
Okay. And in Ontario, Star OPP on the major highways
Right.
is the fast way to get help when you see somebody doing something crazy.
Right.
The rest of Canada, it's still 911. They don't have that in place yet. So depending on where you're listening to this show,
Yeah.
Star OPP or 911, they're
Correct.
doing something bad.
Right.
Good. We're going to be back after this with more Lemonade Car Show. The Lemonade Car Show is sponsored by OMVIC, Ontario's vehicle sales regulator. The Lemonade Car Show is sponsored by OMVIC, Ontario's vehicle sales regulator. Welcome back to the Lemonade Car Show, brought to you by OMVIC and Crown. I'm joined by Sergeant Alex Crew and our silent Chris
For
Muir on
once.
the
For once.
It's Ask the Officer Day. We haven't actually. Before we go to a call, I want to reiterate a question that came out during our insurance show a couple
Right.
weeks ago, and they were asked, "What is the ramifications of driving without insurance?" And we got the answer from an insurance perspective. Now, as an officer, what happens when you pull over somebody and they don't have insurance?
Okay, so upon conviction, you're looking at a minimum $5,000 fine. Minimum 5,000, up to 25,000. Yeah, and then
Chris
it can,
just clenched over there.
yeah.
No,
And for
thank you.
subsequent offenses, it's 10 up to $50,000, $10,000 to $50,000, as well as the Justice of the Peace can suspend your driver's license, as well as have your vehicle impounded for up to 3 months. So he can order your vehicle be impounded, and you be responsible for the towing and the storage fees on top of that.
So you get busted, you're busted hard the first
Yeah.
time right away.
Yeah, well, that's the whole idea. Is again, the law-abiding citizen. We're paying some
lot
pretty
of
good
money.
premiums, right?
Yeah.
So why should the scofflaw get away with not having to pay anything? So there's got to be, I guess, a little bit of a sting to that particular offense.
Oh, that's just a huge thing. I'm talking to one of your colleagues, and he told me the numbers. I'm like, are you serious?
Yeah.
It's like cheaper to murder somebody. No, it's not.
If something went sideways, that would be a lot more expensive than $5,000 to $50,000 or $5,000 to $25,000. You could lose everything, absolutely everything for the rest of your life because you didn't want to pay your $400 a month premium or whatever it was because insurance was expensive.
Yeah, no, that's true. Okay, now we'll go to the phones. We got that one.
Hello, this is Dominic. I can't remember all what you wanted me to leave, but anyhow, my question is about how dark can the tinted windows be on cars, and can they go all the way around? And the headlights seem to be getting brighter and brighter, and they aren't on high beam. Is there a limit to how bright a headlight can be? Thanks, bye.
So light and dark.
Yeah, so let's talk about tinting. So there's a section on the Highway Traffic Act, color coding obscuring interior. So for me, looking from the outside in, I have to have basically a clear view of what's going on inside the car. All right, there is no, you can be 20%, 32%, 35% under the Highway Traffic Act. So it could be dependent on a number of things. Time of day, is it sunny out? Is it
The weather,
overcast?
yeah.
Is it nighttime? Weather like this when it's sloppy and salty, and sometimes the salt gets splashed up into the side windows. If I can't look in and have a clear view of the interior, basically the offense has been committed. Now, that only applies to the windows, meaning to the left and to the right of the driver. So the ones behind,
Could be black.
they could be dark as you want. Same with the one at the rear.
Windshield can't be touched, though. It has to
Cannot
be
be touched,
factory.
yeah.
But I see a lot of cars, and you mentioned weather factors, and especially at nighttime. I can't see in.
Yeah, I know.
Those, and they're doing it anyway.
Yeah,
Do
and
you
they're-
guys actually make people take that stuff off?
Well, I can't make you take it off,
Oh.
but I can give you a ticket for what I believe is too dark.
Do you guys ticket that?
Yes, there's an offense for that. It's a $110 fine. As well as, it's a safety issue as well, because you have to think about cyclists and pedestrians. When you're making that turn, if it's dark out and your windows are very darkly tinted, you might not be able to see when you're making that turn the pedestrian or the cyclist.
And eye contact is helpful
It's
at
huge, isn't it?
crosswalks
Yeah.
for that. So
In,
that takes it
in the
away.
motor vehicle safety standard that we use, 30% opacity can be applied to the side windows of the front cabin before I have to fail it on a safety, which allows 70% of light transference from the inside to the outside or the outside to the inside. That said, dark tint on a car, if you're in a dark environment, is horrible. You can't see out the side windows. It makes it hard to back out of your driveway. And as far as the windshield goes, after 2017, January 1st, you weren't allowed to have any tint on the windshield. Before, it was 75 millimeters from the top of the roof to where the tint had to end. And again, it was 30% opacity just to block out the glare of the sun.
No, professional places that do tinting, do they do what their customers require of them, or do they have to follow the law?
Well, what is the law? That's just it.
Because there's no number
Exactly.
except for safety.
So it's like you can go to, license plate covers, dark gray. You can buy them at Canadian Tire.
You could buy them at the license bureau.
Exactly. But just because you
But
can
you're not
buy
supposed
them
to have
doesn't mean
them.
they're legal, right? So that's why it's one of those buyer beware things.
And it's,
Those license plate covers, though, at the where I go get my sticker renewed, you can buy them there.
but it's a private facility too. That's the trick.
Yeah.
A lot of the Service Ontario is a privately run
Exactly.
franchise.
Well, way to mess people up. Like, make
Yeah,
up
for
your
sure.
minds.
Exactly.
We'll be back with more Lemonade Car Show after this break. The Lemonade Car Show is sponsored by OMVIC, Ontario's vehicle sales regulator. The Lemonade Car Show is sponsored by OMVIC, Ontario's vehicle sales regulator. Welcome back to the Lemonade Car Show, brought to you by OMVIC, Crown, Hotspot, Auto Parts, and Sound Insurance. I'm here with Sergeant Alex Crew and Chris Muir, our mechanic on the end, and we're having Ask the Officer for the whole half hour, which is very cool. This time of year, we're still in messy, crazy time of year.
Right.
Every time there's a snowstorm or a slush storm or ice storm or whatever's been happening now, the news is always the same, and they always call one of you guys,
Yeah.
and you all say the same thing over and over and over again. Is the message not getting through, or why do people lose their minds
I don't
and
know.
not stay home?
Some can't stay home, but I don't know. Maybe it's just what I've done for so long that I'll check the forecast before I go to bed. If we're expecting a nasty snowstorm, well, okay, you need to leave yourself some extra time. All right, you need to clean your car off, your windshields.
Whole car.
Exactly, the hood.
Stuff flying off. Did you see that
the
thing
roof.
on Carrie Schmidt's Twitter feed yesterday
Yeah.
or the day before? A big hole in a
Exactly.
windshield.
I mean, it potentially could end somebody's life, correct?
Yeah.
Right? As well as following distance, folks. Increase your following distance. A lot of times when we have this, we'll call it extreme weather, it's because people are driving too fast for the conditions and they're not leaving themselves enough distance between the vehicle in front of them. So it's almost like a broken record, but we're just trying to get that message out, folks.
Speed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, the other thing, a lot of times, is you're leaving a decent speed, and this doesn't have to be when it's
Yeah.
snowy, but anytime, and someone cuts into it
Yeah.
because they're like, cool, there's my spot.
Yeah.
Your instinct is to get really angry at that person.
Yeah, it can be
You have to
annoying.
pull back again, though, and make your spot again and again and again if you have to, because
Yeah.
you're protecting yourself, not getting vengeance on this person.
Exactly.
Which is tough. But yeah, the snow all over the vehicle, or when they've just put these on and they're peering out through the windshield, and that makes me crazy. If you can't clear off your car, you can't be driving. It's part of driving
They
a
do
car.
have extensions, the ones, you can, if you're not
We use a
tall
broom.
enough. Well, there
Top
you
of a
go.
minivan, got a
That as
broom.
well, yeah.
And if your car's too precious to drag a few bristles across, save it for the summertime.
For sure.
Is there, we have idling bylaws in place at most jurisdictions, and now this time of year when it's really cold, we want to go heat the cars up and leave them keep running. That's technically not allowed, correct?
Well, again, it's the idling bylaw, but it's a good way to get your vehicle stolen as well. So.
Oh, good point.
Yeah. So it does happen when we get the really cold weather. We do see an increase of auto theft. So it's interesting because I had actually somebody call me in regards to, well, will that increase your insurance premium? So if next time you have your insurance people on, ask them if you leave your car idling, the door unlocked, and it gets stolen, will that increase your insurance premiums? I would think that it would.
Well, yeah, having your car stolen is,
Yeah.
if you own up to having done that. Well, I had an officer on a few years ago, and he said that he's watched cars, people go up to a gas pump, and they leave the keys in the car, and then they go in and pay, as if there's some little magic cone of nobility around gas
Isn't that
pumps, and
something,
no one will
isn't it?
take
I know.
it. And people just take them from there, like it's a
sad,
really
isn't
popular
it?
place to, grab cars. So, I don't know. Is there any other information that you would like to have out there for drivers? I know reporters come to you and ask all the same things over and over again, but we've got bigger vehicles on the
Yeah.
road. They're heavier.
Right.
We've got more congestion,
Sure.
more of them. With all these bigger vehicles, should people be changing the way they're driving?
Absolutely. I know in Toronto we have Vision Zero. It's a 5-year program to reduce the number of fatalities and seriously injured individuals down to zero. We call them KSIs, killed or seriously injured. And I guess one of the main points is that everybody has a shared responsibility. Pedestrians, cyclists, motorists, especially motorists, because we've got that 3,000-pound metal missile.
Protection, yeah.
Even if you're not at fault and you hit a pedestrian or you hit a cyclist, you're going to do the most damage. So we need, again, shared responsibility. Be courteous, folks. Slow down. If somebody's got their signal light in or on and they're trying to merge in, let them in. Don't speed up and say you're not getting in front of me. Yeah. Just pack your patience and be courteous.
It has become a bit of a game. And I say driving's a team sport, and you really have to, take care of everybody else. And the other thing is you brought up pedestrians and cyclists.
Yeah.
A lot of people say, well, they're on their phone or they stepped off the curb or they're not looking. And I go, okay, they're dead, you're right. Feel better?
Exactly.
Like, you win in the car, you
Yeah.
win. And especially if the weather's terrible, I figure I'm warm and sitting here, I'm going to let people go
For sure.
because they're out there facing, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we'll make people safer drivers now, and they'll know that they're going to pay $5,000 if they don't have insurance.
Right.
And if they do their handheld, it's going to be worse. And if they're drinking too much in a bar and hit and running, it's going to be even worse than that.
There you go.
That's like happy days, everybody. That's all we have for the Lemonade Car Show. I'd like to thank my guests, Sergeant Alex Cruz, Chris Muir, and of course our sponsors, Omvic Crown, Hotspot Auto Parts, and Sound Insurance, and always to our viewers. That's all the time we have.